God forbid you just stop the car until the track is definitely clear. I mean,
When have you seen a hurricane in Texas? Well, it happened that day.
What's all-star about having every driver? I mean, it's ridiculous.
Good guy, ass. Good guy, can't drive a race car. Sorry.
You're listening to the Foreign Fuel Podcast.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Foreign Fuel Podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube and you see that my name is Dominic Capilupo, that is inaccurate. My name is still Steve Ray, just filling in for Dom tonight. No Dom, but I am joined by our other co-host, Wesley Riddle. Just the two of us tonight, a little two and fuel action for this Richmond recap, the Cookout 400, Richmond, Virginia. Wes, one of your home tracks up there in Virginia. Good to see you again. How's everything been going?
Yeah, it's been, I guess now, 2 weeks since I've been on. I've had family in town. They stayed for about 10 days to 12 days. Yeah, 2 hours away from the racetrack, couldn't make it. Um, Family in town, dog starting her first heat, had a good crown put in. That's kind of all the eventful stuff in the past, 2 week stretch. So it's good to be back. Hate I missed the Richmond race live. But I'm glad we're going to be able to talk about it a little bit. Also bummed out. That's a track I like to go to. Grew up going there to some bush races, some cup races back in the day. Um, so it's just a nice staple track for me. I've seen Jeff Gordon win there a couple times. Cool as a kid. Beat Dale Earnhardt in 2000, which was nice. That was a kind of early birthday gift. So yeah, the track has a lot of special place in my heart. But yeah, just bummed to miss it, but glad we're here to talk about it.
Yeah, Richmond is always one of those places. We talked about this in the preview episode. It you always kind of know going into Richmond what kind of race you're going to get. Especially lately over the last handful of years, you have pit strategy that comes into it, which you see a lot on the road courses, but when it comes into play at a short track like Richmond, it does make for some pretty entertaining racing from a strategy perspective because Richmond isn't it's not like, yes, there are moments where there's bump and runs and tempers flaring and stuff like that. Richmond has definitely had those exciting moments, but it's not something that you think of like an old Bristol or Martinsville or something like that. And so having this aspects, over the last handful of years of pit strategy and stuff like that has really made for some excitement at Richmond. Um, so I guess for anybody, looking ahead to next year, Wes, if they're looking forward to going to Richmond, is there anything, as someone that's been there before that stands out to you about there? Maybe somewhere around the area, something about the track. What to you stands out about Richmond Raceway?
I think one of the biggest things is just the cleanliness of the racetrack and the environment of the racetrack. It's a really good just track to be at, I feel like, for the vibe. Um, it's a lot smaller, I feel like, of a venue where there's not a lot of exterior space for you to work with, but I feel like that's what makes it really special. Just because it's a little bit tighter. I feel like even tighter than Martinsville. Not really the outer part of the track, but at least the fan zone and the main part of the racetrack. I also think that the infield is really worth it. I've been to the infield and it's super nice there. They've done a really good job keeping it updated. They've made some renovations over the years. I think I went, can't remember what year it was. It might have been 2019, and actually got kind of like a private, unintended track tour right before they did some of the renovation work. And they were going to tear down. I kind of learned early about it. They were going to tear down everything, rebuild some parts of the infield, and it turns out it's a really good fan experience. So I feel like that's a really good plus. And then I feel like just under the lights, especially when it gets late, it's just I don't know. I just the vibe for me, and I feel like my bias might kick in, but I've always just really enjoyed seeing nice long green flag runs. I know that's not everybody's cup of tea, but it's just a good endurance race for drivers and seeing who's able to have the right pit strategy work if the cautions don't fall. I feel like that makes it for, a different perspective when you watch a NASCAR race, especially one in person, right? Because a lot of people, you go and you expect the wrecks, and if you don't get them, you might be a little bit disappointed, but you're still going to have a good time just being at the track. And I feel like this is a good example of a track where You don't really need a lot of cautions, but it's also not a bad race. You're going to see passing, you're going to see good strategy. You just need to make sure you pay attention to it. In terms of the placement, it's in a little bit of a rougher side of Richmond, but there's still a lot to do. I mean, Richmond's, it's our capital city. There's plenty to do. You just need to make sure you go to the right areas. Outside of the racetrack directly, there's not as much. But yeah, you drive maybe, I don't know, 25 minutes east, or not even east, 25 minutes west. You've got Short Pump. You're not far from downtown, which is only about 10, 15 minutes from the track. There's a good area a little bit south near the airport that's pretty good. So there's a lot to do. You just need to make sure you get to the right spot. But overall, I think Richmond is just a good, solid Virginia capital city racetrack.
Yeah, this is one of those tracks or dates on the schedule. And we've talked about this a few times that Richmond, obviously, back in the day, having two races a year, then got consolidated back to one race a year. I was going back and I was watching a race from, gosh, I don't know, 2007 or 8 or something. And there's grandstands all around the track, just packed full. And obviously, a lot of those have been torn down. But I think Richmond has found a good spot now. Instead of having two races a year where maybe you don't get the attendance that you want, they've done a really good job of making the most of their one date on the schedule and just really having, solid race, solid attendance, stuff like that. They've earned a spot on the schedule every single year, obviously, but I think they've done a really good job at, having a race taken away, but not completely losing the track entirely. They're making the most of it. And I think next year going back to kind of where the Chase cutoff race was for a number of years, I think it's going to be just inside of the Chase next year. I think will be a perfect spot for it right there in that early September window.
I think this is a little bit better for next year being in the chase versus being outside of it because of that one date, like you talked about, just because this is a very driver dependent racetrack and also very important for the crew to make sure that they execute on pit road. I feel like that's a critical race to have everything encapsulated for execution and, having a driver be able to contend for the championship. I feel like this is such a great racetrack to have, for those reasons. So I think that's going to make the 2027 race even more compelling. Just seeing how, you can't fumble the ball. I mean, this is where it's game time from this race to the very end of the year. And one mistake in this race, you can go 2 laps down really early, and then you have to pray for your cautions and timing to be able to get back on the lead lap. So I feel like that's going to make the strategy and just the overall driver dependency, tire fall off, all of that's going to be a lot more important when we have that as the first race of the chase.
Yeah, just looking ahead to next year, Saturday, September 11th. Go ahead and mark your calendars. The Cookout 400 returns to Richmond Raceway for the first race of the Chase in 2027. So that's going to be fun to get Richmond back in that spot there. As far as what we saw on Saturday night, it was not the Austin Dillon 400 like we thought that it was going to be. It was not 3 in a row for Austin Dillon. He was not a factor really at all. He ended up finishing 19th, 2 laps down. So the JGR setups did not work for 3 years in a row for RCR and Austin Dillon, but pretty much came down to three guys: Ryan Blaney, Chase Briscoe, and your eventual winner of the Cookout 400, Joey Logano. Unfortunately, no Sam here this week to be able to gloat all over that, so the Joey Logano glazing will not be happening as much as if you were here. But Wes, the one thing I want to point out is that Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, Austin Cindric, and I'll even throw in Josh Berry too, all had arguably top 5, all top 10 cars for sure, but they had 4 really fast Ford Mustangs on Saturday night. Another strong performance for Penske plus Wood Brothers that we saw at Richmond. Couple that with a strong performance that we saw at Iowa. The next track coming up, New Hampshire, another short, flat 1 mile track. is Penske starting to find their way? Do we need to be starting to count Penske into some more championship contenders at this point, or is it just kind of the tracks that we've seen over the last couple weeks?
I think it's hard to say, but I think back. I think I talked about it right before we got to North Wilkesboro. I looked back at Ryan Blaney and Joey Logano and Austin Cindric, just how they had fared. And a lot of their best runs came at Martinsville and Bristol, like early in the year, and then Phoenix, Ryan Blaney getting the win. So it seemed like it's just the Fords are kind of more geared to have the setups that they need to be able to do good on these style of racetracks. So we saw it at North Wilkesboro with Joey Logano winning. Indianapolis was a little bit different, but that's obviously the home of Roger Penske. So, they're gonna show up every single time, and they were pretty competitive for the most part. I don't know if they had, a race winning car, but Joey Logano sure, he had a shot to get up there and get it done. Uh, at Iowa, you saw Ryan Blaney in the mix all day. He was a top guy. Ty Gibbs got the best of him there. But then here at Richmond, it was again Penske. So New Hampshire, another track, it's going to line up perfect for them with Ryan Blaney being the defending winner. Josh Berry finishing second there last year. No, Joey Logano's won there a time or two. So it's just this little stretch that we're on is perfect for them. It's a bummer for them because after this, I mean, we're going to have Bristol come back, but we've got mile and a halfs that are going to be really difficult for them to try to overcome the obstacle of getting ahead of Chevrolet and getting ahead of Toyota because they just don't have the speed on the mile and a halfs.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly, we look for the Toyotas on the mile and a halfs and some of the bigger tracks. The Chevrolets are so up and down right now. It seems like one week they'll be there, the next week they really won't be. Um, Ford and Penske is really starting to, Penske specifically, I wouldn't quite throw the Roush cars in there, but um, Penske's really starting to find their way with some of these shorter tracks. So just gonna kind of quickly, touch over the race here. There really wasn't a whole lot, like I said, a lot of green flag racing that comes from Richmond. So that's where a lot of the pit strategy came in. Stage one was predominantly a Ryan Blaney, Chase Briscoe battle back and forth. Um, Under the first pit stop, we saw an uncontrolled tire penalty for Austin Hill, plus a speeding penalty for Ty Gibbs. This has been kind of a kind of an Achilles heel for Ty Gibbs the last few weeks. They had a speeding penalty just a couple weeks ago that they had to overcome, and now a speeding penalty at Richmond that really threw him for a loop. Um, so some things to clean up there. Ultimately, Ryan Blaney holds on and wins stage one. Moving ahead into stage two, again, a lot more green flag racing, pit strategy coming into place. Wes, anything notable that you saw outside of a Zane Smith wreck in the second stage?
I'm trying to isolate stage two in my head. I don't have the like race report pulled up. Yeah, Zane Smith for him, man. This just a touch on him continues just like a miserable kind of second third of the year here. I mean, it wasn't long ago where he was the talk of the town with just how well he was running, but I just feel like also the stretch of races for him in front row doesn't really fit to their, it's not in their track record. Aside from I feel like Todd Gilliland and Martinsville, that's about the only thing that they're going to have going for short tracks or anything around a mile or less. So, yeah, bummer for him. Aside from that, I think this is the point in the race where we saw even Denny Hamlin. He had some good momentum. Ryan Blaney started to fade a little bit. Chase Elliott kind of emerged, showed himself in the top 10 where he wasn't really a factor too much in the first stage. So, and I feel like Chase Briscoe too, and Joey Logano, the two that ended up being the dominant cars that just kind of ran off with the race. We kind of saw them emerge as the guys that it seemed like it was setting up for to be the victory, or contend for the victory at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. Joey Logano going on to win stage two over Denny Hamlin, Chase Briscoe. Um, Again, we talk about the the Penske dominance. Joey Logano third and first in the two stages. Austin Cindric fourth in the first two stages. Ryan Blaney was first and fifth. You look at Josh Berry, fifth and sixth. I mean, all these guys having incredible, top 10 nights, scoring a ton of points. And it was really just a back and forth between Penske and Gibbs. I'm curious what would have happened with Ty Gibbs had he not had that speeding penalty. Obviously, he came back and he finished 15th, a lap down, but you just have to wonder, like, man, Briscoe second, Hamlin fourth, Christopher Bell came back for seventh. You just have to wonder, like, what if he didn't have a speeding penalty on the first stop? You could have easily seen Ty Gibbs up there in the top 10, maybe even contending for the win. Um, and then you have the couple, you have the few Hendrick guys. This is just the big three that's coming out. Again, you have the Penske guys there, the Gibbs guys are there. Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, William Byron, and Alex Bowman, all four Hendrick guys getting top tens at Richmond. So we're just no matter what, we're just still seeing, the cream rise to the top. It's still going to be a battle between the big three.
Yeah, it's really been Toyotas ever since Texas, and I went back just to look. This is actually the second time since Texas, so in the last 12 races, only the second time that they've had two or less Toyotas in the top five when it came to the finishing results. The only other race that happened that was the Coronado Naval Base race, which was won by Toyotas. Corey Haim got his first win, and then Bubba Wallace finished second. So that's the only other race where two or less Toyotas finished in the top five. Granted, I think that there was a better shot, like you mentioned with Ty Gibbs. I would have put him probably just with how his car looked and how he was able to navigate the traffic he had to deal with, probably between Chase Briscoe and Denny Hamlin as kind of the second guy. But yeah, that speeding penalty just hurt his day. Denny Hamlin had a slow pit stop, which we'll talk about just briefly here in the third stage, that kind of halted his chance at maybe getting up there with Briscoe and Logano, but I just still don't think he had the car to contend with those two. They were just lights out. And then Christopher Bell, this track at times has been good to him, but other times not as much. I don't know, just doesn't seem like it's in his wheelhouse like a New Hampshire that we're going to have next week. But he was, again, top 10 all day. So Toyotas are all right there. It's just a matter of, they didn't execute the days that they needed to.
Yeah, in stage three, really the only notable thing on track, lap 285, Carson Hocevar seemingly going from fifth gear, trying to get to fourth, instead went to third. And I think Jeff Burton put it perfectly. It is an engine builder's worst nightmare, is a misshift. They call it the money shift for a reason, because it's going to open up the checkbook, because there goes a whole engine block right there. So that was unfortunate for Hocevar. He really wasn't having a standout night to begin with anyways, but certainly finishing last and now dropping to 11th in the point standings. Man, Hocevar over the last couple of weeks has just been kind of on that, kind of just like what you were talking about with his best buddy Zane Smith, kind of going on this skid. Hocevar's been right there with him. Outside of a good performance at Indy, but yeah, just I'm not sure what's happening with the 77 team. They had all this momentum in the first third of the season, and now it's just seemed to be slipping kind of at the wrong time with only two races to go before the chase starts. And I mean, granted, still, they're only sitting 15 points out of eighth where Kyle Larson sits right now, so it's not impossible for them to get back, ahead a few spots in the points. But if they're not careful, they're only 15 points ahead of William Byron in 12th, so it can easily go the other way.
Yeah, and just thinking about the track that we have next week, SVG ran really well there last year. And then Ryan Preece is, you give him the right car, he's going to kick everybody's butt. Like, you won't stand a chance against Ryan Preece in New Hampshire. So it's two tracks for those guys that are right there on the cutoff, SVG in 16th and Ryan Preece in 17th. They have one really good race. Hocevar has another misfortunate, finish that takes him outside of the top 30, I mean, that will really narrow that gap up. And then Daytona, another wild card. It really doesn't take a lot for the points to swing like people would assume that it wouldn't. I feel like a lot of people just assume it's safe, kind of like Tyler Reddick. Everybody thought just because he won those 5 races, he was a lock. And now he's lost probably 250 points that he could have had if he hadn't had the summer slump that he's been in. So, but yeah, unfortunate for Hocevar. Just one of those driver errors you don't need to make and shouldn't make. But I will, give him a little credit. He's not the only one that's done it. We've seen the best of the best do it. I feel like we've talked about it probably 20 different times. There's probably 20 different drivers that have had an issue similar to this. But yeah, terminal and finished dead last. So uh, just needs to be careful in New Hampshire, but he's not too bad there.
Yeah, and speaking of SVG, this guy continues to impress me on the ovals, going out and getting 14th here at Richmond. I mean, SVG is going to mess around and win an oval race here. I mean, if or when he does,
Oh
it's
yeah.
not going to surprise me in the slightest because this guy year over year, I think I think him and Ty Gibbs are kind of like a toss-up of most improved over the course of the last 12 months. But dude, every time, like for us to be sitting 24 races into the year, I mean, yes, SVG is sitting in the last chase spot right now, but to be sitting 50 points above the cut line, and we've only run 4 road course races, so 20 ovals, and SVG is sitting comfortably I mean, comfortably at 50 points. That's still not comfortable being 16th, but considering what it could be, I think that that's arguably up there for performance of the year, being able to do that. Because, when NASCAR announced that they were switching to the chase point system, I think most of the NASCAR community was like, all right, well, that's it for SVG. He's not making the chase. I'm guilty of it. I didn't pick him to make the chase. I thought he was going to be kind of right in that 17th to 20th range, but and this guy just continues to just grind out these types of finishes, doesn't put himself in bad situations. And there are some races where I mean, look, he finished top 5 at Nashville. He was running really solid towards the end of the Atlanta race. Um, I mean, this guy is really improved. So I think if he goes out and actually wins an oval, that's not as far-fetched as I would have thought 12 months ago.
Oh yeah. Uh, this is just a shout out to all the NASCAR hypocrites that are out there. It's funny to me how many people, I feel like even before, and I'm not saying you, I'm saying just the general basis, especially with SVG, because he does still get a lot of crap for no reason. Um, so many fans just assume that NASCAR drivers can step into any other world of motorsports and have incredible success right away without, even looking left or right. And then SVG comes over here with the boatload of experience he has in supercars, and NASCAR fans don't even think he's ever going to learn anything and not and not have an improved second season. And like that's just blasphemy, if that's a good word that they would use there. So it's I mean he's such an incredible talent. Like of course he was going to have a better season, just improving and getting better. And I feel like he's elevated the Trackhouse cars to the next level. In the sense of where they've been. He's able to take these kind of crap boxes that they've been dealt recently and just turn them into actually competitive cards. And that's a testament just to who he is as a driver. I mean, he's beating Ross Chastain in points. I don't know if the situation this year has been aligned the right way for Ross, but to be able to do that and for Ross to be considered one of the best in sport is a statement just to how talented he is. So, yeah, SVG. He's only got, I guess, this season two. What is it? Two, not counting Atlanta, two non-super speedway and non-road course or street course. I guess this year just road courses, but um, two non-top tens, or I guess two top tens. The one at Nashville, and then he had the one at North Wilkesboro. Um, And then you just look at how he ran the Coke 600, how he runs at Martinsville, how he ran at Phoenix, how he ran at Richmond. He's got some incredible talent, and he's making the most of his opportunity.
Well, moving ahead towards the end of the race, like I said, really, Blaney started to fade a little bit, and it turned into more of a Briscoe versus Logano show. Probably with about 75 to go, roughly. Chase Briscoe came into pit. Logano came in pit a lap later. And they stayed out and did that for probably about 40 laps or so. And then, roughly with about 35, 40 to go, and they came in for their final pit stops. Came in on the same lap, came out side by side. And ultimately, Christopher Bell tried to kind of flip the strategy. He pit around lap 344 and really tried to stretch it the rest of the way. When he was getting, they had a soundbite when he was getting passed by Logano and Briscoe. He was asking if that was for position. He goes, "Well, there goes my chance at it." So, um, and ultimately, Joey Logano holds on for his second win of the year, third win at Richmond. Joey Logano has jumped up. He's now sitting ninth in points, only 1 point away from Kyle Larson in eighth. This was a guy at one point just, I mean, 7 weeks ago or something like that, that he was outside of the chase or barely inside of the chase. And now he's 142 points above the cut line. With it being 2026 and an even year, are we going to see one of those Tony Stewart 2011 type runs from Joey Logano when it comes to the chase?
Oh man, I hate to say that there's a chance, but I would say there's a little bit of a chance. This is that 15% bracket that didn't get, they said 85% of the time the champion came within the top six in points. Well, this might be the guy in that 15% range, even sitting at ninth. I was looking at it. I think realistically, Joey could make up two more spots. I think there's a chance. I don't think he could pass Bell unless Bell has a disastrous mechanical issue in New Hampshire, right? That takes him out. Um, Daytona's the wild card. I think that Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson could have miserable days, and Joey Logano gets stage points, at least five in both to make up at least something on the other two, and then finish 5 to 15 spots better than Larson and Chase Elliott. So I feel like that plus the wild card could really get Joey up to maybe seventh in points. Um, but at the same time, Joey's still in a very, very much of a danger zone. Like Chris Buescher only sits, what is that, 6 points behind him, and then only 14 points ahead of Carson Hocevar. Still not that far ahead of William Byron, Daniel Suarez. That's about, those four could all somehow get around Joey, just depending on how the next 2 weeks work out. So there's a chance from where he is at, and then looking at the races in the chase that we have, Darlington, and maybe I already touched on this the same way, but Darlington, Gateway, Bristol, Phoenix, Talladega, and Martinsville. I guess those six races are not mile and a halves, Gateway being the kind of exception there, but where they are going to be competitive. And that could really kind of mix things up. And I feel like that also benefits his teammates, Austin Cindric and Ryan Blaney, to have really good days. So Cindric's still close to the cutoff line. I think he'll be safe. But I also think Cindric, it wouldn't surprise me one bit you know, if Cindric could climb from 15th in the chase to finishing top 8, honestly, just because of how these tracks will line up for their team.
Yeah, I think for Joey Logano and the 22 team, when it does come to the start of the chase at Darlington, I think Darlington is going to be a huge indicator if they can be considered, if they can be serious championship contenders at this point, because the spring race at Darlington, they were running no higher than 30th on speed all race.
And
And if,
I think they missed the mark. Like I think they
yeah,
must have tried something totally different because both their teammates finished top 5. So it
yeah,
doesn't make any sense that Joey should be running outside the top 30.
yeah. And so if they can take that information from the spring race and apply it to the Southern 500 in just a couple weeks, I think they'll be okay. They usually run fairly well at Gateway 2. So Penske's usually pretty good at Bristol It's just those mile and a halves that they cannot seem to figure out this year outside of Ryan Blaney. But you know that they'll be good at Phoenix, you know that they'll be good at Martinsville. So I think if he's the guy that if I was looking at somebody that's not in the top six in points, he's going to be that one guy that you do not want to get hot in the chase. If you're one of these other 15 guys, you do not want Joey Logano getting hot in the chase because he he and Paul Wolf can just do crazy stuff that you don't think is possible. So I'm gonna keep an eye out for him when it comes, starting in September. Keep an eye out for Joey Logano on the 22 team. Outside of that, Wes, I mean, really, that was kind of what we expected from Richmond. Anything else notable before we move into kind of some off-track news?
Well, I looked at the top 11 in points, or not in points, but the top 10, 11 finishers from the race. Those were the guys that all finished on the lead lap. And inside the top 10, all four Hendrick cars, which I think they said that was the first time that's happened since maybe last year, maybe the year before. I don't even know when. But it's nice to see all of those guys up front, still not having the race pace to contend with Joey Blaney in the Toyota camp, but at least they were there. Like that's better than nothing. Or where they've been other weeks where they've just run 11th to 15th or 18th. Like it's just good that they can have some kind of momentum to try to work on, and they're going to need it if they want to have a chance when it comes to the come to the chase. And then also, I guess that's pretty much it from the Cup race, but did want to give props to Caden Honeycutt for getting his second win of the year. Actually put together like a dominant race to where he was the guy to beat. Definitely a needed win for him, a good confidence booster, just where a lot of wins have kind of slipped out of his grasp throughout the year. But he was able to get the win. Corey Heim, second place. He was right there too. Let's see, I wanted to look real quick. Christian Eckes finished in third. SVG, who started on the pole, led a couple laps. He finished in fourth place. And then Grant Enfinger, who also led a good bit of races. He's kind of getting a little get in his groove with the CR17. He was able to finish in fifth. Tristan McKee made his debut, finished eighth. Nick Light stepped in for Tricon, finished in 12th. And I think the other short-term replacement was Leland Honeyman. I think it was supposed to be Christopher Bell. Leland finished in 17th, which isn't terrible considering just the last minute change and that being a short preparation for him. So yeah, good work there. I think Stuart Friesen did not finish the race, which puts him in a little bit of trouble for the playoffs because they've only got, I think, one race left, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
Yeah, they'll set their chase after New Hampshire.
Okay. So New Hampshire's it. And that put Friesen, let's see, 20 points outside of the cutoff. So now he's far behind Tyler Ankrum. It's going to be interesting to see if he can make up the difference. Jake Garcia is 1 point behind Friesen, so they've both got a little bit to make up to try to make their effort into getting into the playoffs or the chase.
I just wanted to go back to when you were talking about Hendrick Motorsports a couple minutes ago. The last time that all four Hendrick Motorsports cars finished inside the top 10 before Saturday night at Richmond was Talladega, April 2025, 50 races ago.
Ooh.
So long time since all four Hendrick cars finished inside of the top 10 together.
Mm.
And even looking individually at a team, you look at Chase Elliott finished inside of the top 5, but before that, he only had, since he won at Texas, he went 12 races after that without another top 5 finish. And he only, in that stretch, only had one top 10, and that was a 7th place at Nashville. Way back when Nashville. He came into Richmond with 9 straight races without a top 10. So this was a must need for Chase Elliott and for the 9 team. It's kind of a miracle almost that they're still 6th in points. This was a good race for Kyle Larson to kind of stop their recent bleeding. It was an average night for William Byron and the 24 team. They've just been kind of this 8th to 10th place team all year. I think it really helped Alex Bowman too, getting a top 10. Nice for the 48 team to put together a solid race, and he's really needing it there. Speaking of the 48 car, obviously we know that next year will be Alex Bowman's final year in the 48 car, but looking ahead to 2028, the guy in your hat, Wes, Connor Zilisch, going to be stepping into the 48 car for Hendrick Motorsports starting in 2028. I don't think that this was a major surprise for anybody. It was just an answer or a question between, is it going to be Corey Day or Connor Zilisch? Obviously now we're finding out that it's Connor Zilisch who will be in that 48 car. How do you feel about this decision for Hendrick Motorsports? Do you think that they're putting the right guy in the car? And what are your thoughts on 2028?
I I do think they're putting the right guy in the car. Um, I feel like Connor's going to be a really good fit for that team. I just hope that the 48 is not still the 48 2 years from now as it is now. Hopefully they can get the numbers pointed in the right direction because, even though Bowman's struggled and some of it could be health related, I just don't know if that team is where it's needed to be for quite a few years now. I'm not sure if that's more of a, just fourth string, being the fourth string number. If it's more of the driver, more of the crew chief, more of the pit crew, more of the overall just dynamic of where they're at now as a staple on their campsite, right? Like there's so many different things that could be playing a factor. Um, and we won't know until we get a change. So I think that Connor Zilisch is going to be a really good guy for that because he'll already, by that point in time, have 2 years of experience. It's going to put, and depending on how long we have the next gen car, it's going to put Corey Day at a very big disadvantage for when he steps in, just because I feel like he does need that seat time. And also, I guess to add on the Corey Day thing, I feel like a lot of people are saying, well, yeah, he's not ready. Like that's been the whole narrative point. But how many times have we seen a driver with 1 year step into the Cup Series and end up finding that success? In fact, Kyle Larson pretty much did the same thing. Like he raced for Turner Motorsports, stepped in, and was off to bat the moment that he stepped in with Chip Ganassi. Granted, he had a bad sophomore year, but that freshman year he had was incredible. Alex Bowman kind of did the same thing. Like he didn't do anything spectacular aside from have the one good Phoenix race where he led some laps for Dale Jr. And then everybody said, well, he needs to be the permanent replacement. Well, why couldn't we say that about Corey Day? He's won more races than Alex Bowman did at this point in time than Alex Bowman did in the I guess then it was I guess it's still nationwide series, you know. And you'll say, well, Bowman wasn't in the car. Well, who's to say Hendrick Motorsports O'Reilly program isn't where it needs to be, and Corey Day's exceeding expectations there. We just assume that they're Hendrick Motorsports and supposed to be the Empire and O'Reilly all of a sudden, where they just kind of started up this operation. And I don't know. I just think that like you can point to more. Ryan Blaney. You can point to Denny Hamlin, who had two kind of mediocre years. You can point to Joey Logano, who didn't race a full-time year. Like there's plenty of examples, and I think that sometimes the right driver needs to be thrown in the fire to be able to have that success. And I feel like Corey Day is a guy that could really tear up some stuff, but also be a race winning guy right off the bat, especially with a team like Hendrick. So um, I don't I don't disagree with the Connor Ziller signing. I'm super happy for him. I think that he does deserve it, but I also don't think that Corey Day should just be overlooked because he doesn't have the experience, because he has the experience. He can win on a Sunday. And I think he could win if you put him in a car right now. It's just you have to have the circumstances line up.
Yeah, I know that this has been a rookie season from hell for Connor Zilisch, but he's another example of guys only getting one full-time year in a lower series and then getting elevated to the Cup Series. So it'll be interesting to see. It does kind of put a roadblock in a way, or definitely some more question marks around Corey Day when he does make his way eventually to the Cup Series of where he's going to be. Because you look at, obviously, Connor going to Hendrick Motorsports, but you look at the other three drivers of William Byron, Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, you're not getting rid of any of those guys. And without, you can't have any more cars added to Hendrick Motorsports. So then that kind of opens up the door of like, where does Corey Day go? Now there's question marks about Michael McDowell staying around the 71 car until Tristan McKee is cup ready. And so if there's truth to that, then that takes a spot there. Do we look at, a Spire situation? Do we look at maybe Corey Day going to Trackhouse? What are they doing over the next couple of years? So it was announced that Corey Day will be coming back to Hendrick Motorsports in the O'Reilly Series for 2027. So at least for next year, Corey Day will be back in the 17 car over on the O'Reilly side, getting a second full-time year in there. I think will definitely help him. But knowing that eventually that answer is going to, that question is going to have to be answered, is what spot opens up for Corey Day in the Cup Series?
I think Dom and I talked about it. I think it's going to be the number 5. I truly think it'll be the number 5. I just don't see Kyle Larson racing another 6 more years that's at the most in the Cup Series. And I feel like it would surprise everybody, but it shouldn't, because this is Cup's not work. He does not want to establish himself in Cup for his entire career. He wants to do what he loves to do, and that's race on dirt. And he continues, and I think I said this on the podcast we did a few weeks ago. I knew you could make it on, or Sam, but if a year like this continues for another 2 years, 2 or 3 years, I don't see Larson having the drive to be able to continue doing this. And I think that this would be the number that Corey Day could step into, and then Larson takes a leadership role and mentors Corey Day to have the success on Sundays, while Larson goes and still does what he loves, and then still finds time to race with Corey, on dirt. So I feel like that's what Kyle would want to do at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, you take a guy that goes from Richmond, Virginia to Knoxville, Iowa, finishes the Cup race, finishes top 10 there. Then, Knoxville was in a bit of a rain delay, so gets on a plane, flies out, and then goes out and wins the Knoxville Nationals the same night that he just finished top 10 in a Cup race. Like, this guy just will race anything on dirt and wants to do that. So it's not, yeah, when I heard you guys talking about that, at first I was like, no way. But then, like, once you actually started explaining it and just, what you said now, it's like, yeah, because every time, especially lately over the last few weeks, with how much Larson has been winning on dirt and how much he's been getting interviewed, um, there's kind of been this hashtag that's gone around Twitter of Blunt Larson. Like, he really doesn't like the Cup car that much. And with his love for dirt racing, I mean, the money is there to be made in the Cup Series, but his passion is really in dirt racing.
Yeah, and the bummer is the car is never going to change. It's just probably going to develop more into what it is now, which would be unfortunate. But yeah, like you said, it's just this car is not Larson's wheelhouse, and he's definitely taken a few little shots here and there just to kind of point his frustration, but also just kind of exclaim his love for dirt racing and his passion for that. So it's I don't know. We'll see. Just give it I would say 2 more years and maybe 28, 29. Larson, even as a Cup champ just last year, it wouldn't surprise me personally. It wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, he'd have a great future in dirt lineup for himself. And also, I don't think Jeff Gordon or Rick Hendrick would want him going anywhere from Hendrick, because I do think Kyle Larson is engraved and cares passionately about Hendrick Motorsports. It's just the NASCAR part of it is definitely frustrating for him right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, some of the racetracks that Corey Day will be racing at next year have found their way onto the 2027 NASCAR schedule. They're kind of taking this approach of tracks announcing their 2027 dates just kind of one by one instead of releasing the whole schedule. So we do know some more of what the schedule is going to look like next year. Obviously, kind of the big news of tracks that we're not going back to, Rockingham will not be back on the schedule for next year for the O'Reilly or the Truck Series. So that has been taken away from NASCAR again. They've been going through some weird ownership changes and things like that, and just wasn't able to get anything lined up then. Homestead will be coming back for the finale next year. They are putting $20 million into a renovation. So that they're putting a ton of money into there, really committed to it being the championship race, at least for this year and next year. We'll see what happens beyond next year, but that weekend they're crowning the champions in all three series will be there November 12th to 14th of 27. NASCAR making their decision in Chicago. They were not able to come to an agreement for the downtown street race. So NASCAR will be returning to Chicagoland Speedway next year. Moves off of 4th of July weekend, which that will go to Iowa. Chicagoland will be moved up a week into the June 25th, 27th. That will be the Cup Series, the O'Reilly Series, and ARCA. So it's good to see that Chicagoland is returning back. That was, I feel like, a big holdup of a lot of the schedule was what's happening with Chicago, where are they racing. So it will be there on the oval next year. Pocono is coming back again for their triple header weekend, June 11th to the 13th, for the Truck Series, O'Reilly, and Cup race. So the trucks, the trucks, O'Reilly, and Cup will be there at Pocono in early June. Kansas is going to have two races again next year. The Cup and Truck race will be May 8th and 9th, and then back in October, they will be there with the Cup, O'Reilly, and another truck race. It looks like ARCA is going there twice as well. So you can catch 2 weekends at Kansas Speedway next year. And I think really the only other thing that's been announced as of now is the Truck Series making their return to Canadian Tire Motorsport Park in 2027 on September 5th next year. So track that they spent, they haven't been there in 8 years, but it's a fun little road course up there, especially for the Truck Series. So it'll be fun seeing them back on the track. Well, Wes, that was pretty much everything that I had.
Yeah, not a lot of kind of drastic changes. It'll be interesting to see, I guess, the question mark date, August 1st, what could be put there. You know, if they have the date for Michigan, Nashville, and Sonoma figured out, what would be that additional race weekend? I don't even have a guess as to what it could be. Could we go to a track twice, or would it be something new on the circuit?
I think the idea for that August 1st is to go back to San Diego.
Well, that would be, I don't know, too much of a good thing. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see how it's put on, but I liked it being a standalone event personally. But granted, if they don't have any other options, at least for 2027, then one last time, if they can plan this being the second and last event, then that would be good too. So I just don't want us to start thinking that's going to be a permanent home on the schedule. But hopefully having a second race here will be just one good return. But it just can't be the first. The first was a spectacle in its own right. I'm excited, like you said, about the trucks going back to Ontario. That'll be a great race. It's always been nice there, but I just hate that we can't get anything else back in Canada. Like we're still missing that Montreal date. I feel like Montreal is the track we need to get to. I know it's a road course, but hell, if we can get the Cup Series there with do a triple header weekend in Montreal, that would be huge for NASCAR, just to be able to go to Canada and even pair it if they could do a Penny Series race, like on part of the racetrack, or do the full racetrack, just have it all encompassed for the weekend. That would be great. But aside from that, yeah, just pretty standard. I was gonna ask you, Steve, what you don't have to tell me a track, but if you had to pick three cities that NASCAR is not currently in, Cup, Xfinity, and Truck, three that we just don't hit at all. What three cities would you like to see hit added to the schedule if there was a way to make it work? Whether it's a racetrack or whether it's a street course race, what three cities would you want to see?
Denver would be number one. I think that's a huge market that maybe not market's the wrong word, but it's an area of the country that I think there are a lot of race fans there with no race to get to, and it's hours to get to a race. I think Denver is definitely in a market that has not been explored at all, but needs to be. I think I agree with you with the Montreal. That is a really good road course up there. And I do think getting some form of, like you said, crossover promotion for the Penny Series would be great there. Um, as far as like a third race, I mean,
You can say Minneapolis.
yeah, well, no, I mean, Elko does put on some good races, ARCA races there.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, outside of that, I mean, there's a few tracks. I would love to see NASCAR get back to Road America one day. They packed that place out and it did put on pretty solid racing. That is another road course. Um, I'm gonna say somewhere like the Pacific Northwest, I think needs to be another market, whether that's the Seattle area. You have that road course in Portland that the O'Reilly Series raced at for a couple of years. I just think that's another area of the country that needs to have some form of top three series racing up there. The ARCA series, ARCA West series gets up there a few times a year, but having the top three series on some form, whether you just start with trucks and then eventually go to O'Reilly and eventually to Cup. But I think that corner, whether I think, Seattle market is, there's a lot of eyeballs there. Portland obviously has the road course there. So I think that's a whole area of the country that needs more attention there. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna say Denver, Montreal, Pacific Northwest. What would be
Yeah,
your
those are
what would be your answer for that?
those are great. I hate to copy you with the first one, but Denver is number one by a long shot. I think if we can somehow get into Denver, or if Denver doesn't work, Colorado Springs, like there's some area right there. I even think Cheyenne, Wyoming, like that stretch right there, if they were able to do some kind of street course race to just get NASCAR in and have it be a spectacle in the city, those three would just be out of this world. But Denver overall, that has to be, and I feel like NASCAR's trying. They just don't know how yet, how to get there. I think I wouldn't be surprised if by 2031, I would say 5 years, that we are racing in Colorado in some aspect. So I would say 5 years. Hopefully we can expect something in Colorado because the leadership they have now, they're going to take moves to try to make sure that happens. Just to continue the evolution, um, kind of the entertainment aspect, but also just keeping it fresh, keeping it enjoyable, keeping new, exploring new opportunities, because that's what's really going to keep NASCAR kind of vibrant and growing over the next few years. So, um, man, it's, I said Montreal a minute ago and you said it, but if there was a way to get into Vancouver, Vancouver's kind of foreign to NASCAR, the whole world over there. I know that's super inconvenient, travel costs. Granted, not going to Japan to do an exhibition race or overseas for importing vehicles, but if there's a
Or
way to get
Mexico?
to, or Mexico, right? Yeah, it's Vancouver, I feel like would be even more realistic than what we had for Mexico, even though it's a little bit further. But that could really be something interesting and just remarkable if it was a feat for it. And I'm not just trying to pick street courses, but I really think I think the fresh eyeballs to the sport are really going to enjoy some kind of spectacle they can witness, or even do just kind of a makeshift short track. If there's a coliseum again that's big enough to host race cars, or just something that can work, there's going to be an answer. NASCAR is going to look into it, but um, I so I'll switch it up. I'll say Denver, Vancouver, and man, there were two I liked, but it kind of brings us back over here. But I think Dom will like this. Uh, One I heard from Jarrett Lundberg, the Iceberg. He said Pittsburgh. Having some kind of race in the streets of Pittsburgh, I think that's a really good move because it does, like he talked about it, encapsulates the working class folks of NASCAR, and they could really tie it in that aspect to where it'd be really interesting to see how a race in their downtown could work. Um, so I'd either say that or what Steve O'Donnell talked about on Busting with the Boys. They can get into New York City. Like that's a dream for that's Steve said that's a dream of his. If there's a way they could somehow get in downtown Manhattan, like that would be unbelievable. And just I feel like just monumental for the sport. Kind of reminds me of F1 making their debut in Las Vegas, but I feel like this this would be next level, and it could really elevate the sport in ways that I don't think anybody would imagine. I think some people, a lot of old school, older fans are going to say this sounds like complete crap, bogus, and I don't blame you. But to continue evolving, you have to have change. So I'll stick with my first two. I'll say Denver. I'll say Vancouver to switch it up, and then I'm actually going to go with the Iceberg on this one though. I'm going to say Pittsburgh.
I do have to say I like what IndyCar is doing with I listen, I'm not here.
I agree.
This is not about politics, okay? But the fact that they're racing on the streets of Washington, D.C. with all the stuff in the backgrounds, I think is really, really cool. Um, we're not here to bring up politics. It has nothing to do with that. But the fact that they're going to be racing by the White House and all these other things, I think is really badass. I think that if they were to explore if IndyCar street race is successful, I don't think that it's out of the question that NASCAR should explore something in the Washington D.C. area either.
I'd also like to stand for the origins of NASCAR and suggest we get back to a beach race. And I suggest the Outer Banks.
Yeah,
I think the Outer Banks would be perfect for that.
somebody's getting punted in the ocean for sure then.
Hell yeah. The tides are shifting there quite a bit, so houses are falling in the water. It won't be long before cars are too.
Okay. All right, well, I think that's going to wrap us up for our Richmond recap. Anything else, Wes, before we sign off from this episode?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for us. I Richmond was just kind of a solid, decent race, just not a whole lot to really ever write home about. It's just, you know, just kind of that average style of a race. Not a whole lot to discuss from it, but um, yeah. Again, congratulations to Joey Logano, second one of the year, and to Sam, our very own Sam, for having no Joey Logano disappointment this week. He's now 2 wins in. Um, Chase has 2 wins. Denny has 4 wins. So all three of you are looking pretty good. Um, Zilish is not going to win for another year and a half, but that's okay. So we'll play it by ear. But yeah, we're gonna have our New Hampshire preview coming up just here in a couple days. By the time this podcast will be out, so you can expect to hear that later this week. But that's it from Steve and I for Richmond.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. New Hampshire preview coming up in a couple days, but for now, for Wes, my name is Steve Ray. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Four and Field Podcast, and we'll catch you next time for our New Hampshire preview.